in the United States, approximately 20,000 people go to the emergency room for carbon monoxide poisoning.
Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas. It's extremely poisonous and it can kill you in minutes if you're exposed to it.
Nearly 500 people die from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Fire and Rescue Captain Antonio Burden is a first responder and has been a victim of a CO leak in his home.
It's a strange feeling. Once you start that, feeling dizzy, then you get a tremendous headache. You also start experiencing nausea, and that nausea can lead to other symptoms.
In a really severe case of carbon monoxide poisoning, someone could lose consciousness or die within minutes.
Hurricanes or severe storms can trigger power outages that last for days. Some people fire up a generator for power or a gas stove to heat their home, but fail to realize the danger.
It's one thing to be cold, it's another thing to be seriously ill and need critical care.
Never use your oven to heat your home. It could be a source of carbon monoxide for you. It's dangerous. Don't do it.
Make sure that their appliances and heating devices are properly vented and maintained by a professional.
Dangers from poorly maintained heating systems are really going to be the #1 cause of carbon monoxide poisonings in the United States.
Carbon monoxide makes people sick, it kills people, and it's completely preventable.
In this insider-exclusive Investigative Network TV special, our news team goes behind the headlines in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with Jeff Tronvold, partner at Eells Tronvold, to cover a major legal story, carbon monoxide poisoning, a landlord's lethal lease. Stacey Struve's story on landlords' obligations and responsibilities to protect their tenants from potentially serious dangers on their properties. Stacey Struve suffered serious brain damage as a result of being repeatedly exposed to carbon monoxide and was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. She was diagnosed with carbon monoxide poisoning when tests revealed the level of carbon monoxide in her blood was 21.6%. A Mid-American Energy technician detected the highest level his machine was capable of detecting in her apartment, 1,000 parts per million of carbon monoxide. To attempt to correct this deadly situation and save money, Stacey's landlord hired an unlicensed, inexperienced handyman who failed to correct the leaks, and the deadly conditions continued. The landlord refused to spend any more time or money on these repairs. The insider-exclusive investigative news team visits with Stacey's attorney, Jeff Tronvold, as he recounts the legal challenges, hoops, and hurdles they had to go through to finally get Stacey justice and protect the building's other tenants from these dangerous conditions. Throughout his career, Jeff has seen many innocent and hardworking people become victimized by businesses, companies, law enforcement, and other individuals, generally all in the name of greed. Jeff has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in Cedar Rapids, in Iowa, and across the nation. He makes it a dedicated mission to get legitimate and truthful answers to what really happened to his clients in each case. And because of that, he is driven to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. Jeff has built a substantial reputation nationwide by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down. And his amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It is my great pleasure to introduce Jeff Tronvold to the show. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you.
Tell our audience a little bit about your law firm. What kind of law do you guys practice?
Primarily, we're a personal injury or an employment law firm. What we do is we represent people who've been injured through somebody else's carelessness, or in some cases, we represent people who've been terminated or wrongfully kicked out of their job.
Yeah, you could, when you graduated law school, you could have went to work for General Motors or IBM or Exxon or ADM, being a corporate lawyer, but you chose the route of representing the little guy. Why?
Well, as I served earlier in my life, I was a military officer. I went to West Point. I got out and went to law school after I had served in the military. I had the opportunity, because I was getting a master's in business administration at the same time, to choose to do a clerkship or an internship one summer, and I did so in a law firm rather than going the business route. And it was that summer I saw how the less fortunate people in our society tend to be injured or not taken care of. And that really flipped a switch within me. And I said, let me take that military background and go fight for somebody who can't protect or represent themselves.
Well, I'm glad you did, because when people get hurt, they don't know what to do, and they need a lawyer that can take a case on. And we're here today because we are going to be discussing a case of Stacey Struve, who was a tenant in a building where there was problems. Tell our audience a little bit about some of those problems.
Well, she's 18-year-old, just going out on her own, signed her first lease. She's going to be independent, moves in. That very first night, she starts to wake up with a massive headache. She's going in and out of consciousness. But luckily was able to phone a family member, who then got the gas company to respond. Turned out there was 1,000 parts per million of carbon monoxide.
She was being poisoned. She was being poisoned, right?
She almost died. She came very close to dying.
So what did she do like any other normal tenant would do?
She immediately got the ambulances were called.
Yeah.
She was treated on site, taken to the hospital. They ran a blood test, and they actually determined that over 23% of her bloodstream was filled with carbon monoxide rather than oxygen.
That's close to fatal, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Now, then she went to the management, right? She went to the landlord.
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, they tried to get some type of response out of the landlord, at least help us with medical treatment. Nothing happened. So the family was forced to seek legal representation.
Well, I understand that the owner of the property did send in somebody who was unlicensed, inexperienced, correct?
Yeah, they actually had a guy who'd sort of moonlight. He had a, average 40-hour-a-week job, but he'd come do maintenance at these different properties that the landlord owned. He had no training in heating or cooling equipment, no certifications, and he'd go around and change the filters, and that was basically all the maintenance he did to a furnace.
Okay. When Stacey came to you initially, all these cases are difficult. What were some of the challenges you were facing to try and get her justice?
Well, initially she'd been sent to a neuropsychologist who looked at her and said, "No, you're just imagining this."
Really?
And on top of that difficulty, brain injuries are difficult to show to a jury anyway. They're invisible injuries.
Yeah.
So I actually lined up appointments with her to see some of the nationally renowned experts in the field of carbon monoxide poisoning, hyperbaric treatment chambers, and there was an MRI facility in Las Vegas where there's an expert in carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
She went through that testing. It was determined she had 2 white matter lesions in the front of her brain, and had also experienced damage to the midbrain areas called the hippocampus and basal ganglia.
Now I want to bring up, Stacey's 18 years old. She was 18 at the time.
Yes.
She probably didn't have a whole lot of money, but you as a plaintiff lawyer, as a trial lawyer that represents the little guy, your firm takes it upon yourself to spend money, the expenses, to try and get the right kind of information to take it to trial, correct?
Correct.
And if you lose, then, and I want to bring this out, about trial lawyers, if you lose, you're out the money. So you got to believe in the case, and you have to believe in fighting for the little guy. And you did that in this case, and I'm sure that expert costs a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, the expenses in that case exceeded $60,000 or $70,000.
Wow, which would be beyond most people to handle themselves. And that's why we do these shows, because to let people know that there are lawyers out there that if they believe in a case, that they will bear the financial burden to seek justice for that person, correct?
That's correct.
So you got this expert to say that, she had these lesions on her brain. What happened then?
Well, we go to trial, and even though the defense, they go hire people to say there's no problem, they relied on that previous neuropsychological evaluation.
Yeah.
There was an ordinance in the city of Cedar Rapids that says you only need to inspect a furnace once every 7 years if you're a landlord.
Yes.
The jury's deliberating. They wanted to help her, but after interviewing the jury, we found out they found the landlord was not negligent because they had inspected it 6 8.5 years.
So they were covered by the law.
Correct.
They could be killing people, but they're covered by the law, right?
Yes.
And so what did the trial judge do?
Well, we attempted to get an instruction on what we call warranty of habitability, concept that when you move in it's going to be safe or habitable.
Yes.
Judge said, hey, that's no different than negligence, and wouldn't give our instruction to the jury. And the way the instructions were written, the jury was predestined to find, hey, it was inspected less than 7 months earlier.
So they found for the landlord. Your client lost.
Correct.
But then you appealed it.
We did.
What happened?
Went to the Court of Appeals in Iowa, and they determined that the warranty of habitability was its own independent cause of action, and that it should actually be broadened. There had existed a case, Vasquez, where a nail was driven into a wall and hit a wire and caused a fire. And previously they'd said, hey, a landlord doesn't need to rip walls out to make sure it's safe. Well, Struve was different. They said a landlord can go in and for $40 to $70 inspect a furnace and make sure that it's safe when they move in.
Yeah.
And it changed the law in Iowa and said that is, those types of steps that aren't overly burdensome to a landlord, they must do to ensure safety.
So this was a landmark case, wasn't it?
Yes, it changed the law in Iowa.
What happened after that?
We entered into discussions with the defense. They knew that the landscape had changed, and they ultimately decided to resolve this through a settlement, which was confidential.
Yeah. You know, it's a shame. We see this time and time again, that when the other side digs their heels in, even if they're wrong, that you have to fight so hard to get justice to the people who richly deserve it. Because I'm sure there were other people that were affected by this carbon monoxide poisoning, right?
And they didn't have as severe effects because Stacey happened to be right above the leak.
Yeah.
But they did it as it came out. There were complaints of headaches, nausea, and other flu-like symptoms.
So what is the law in Iowa now?
Well, now it's broader than it was. What it is when a landlord conveys the premises to the individual, there is a warranty of habitability that this area is safe.
An implied warranty, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what happens if a person moves in and they discover something's wrong with their apartment?
If it's discovered and it's something they can correct in Iowa, you're allowed to report that to the landlord.
They have to take care of it.
The land, under certain, it can vary depending on what the defect is. If you report it to your landlord, they have 30 days under our law to repair it. Otherwise, you can leave or break the lease.
Yeah. Initially, the case was decided against your client because of a local ordinance, correct?
Correct.
This new law supersedes any local ordinances, correct?
Yes, it gives another cause of action, another way to remedy it.
So if a businessman or a business person gets a bright idea to say, hey, let's get the local city to pass an ordinance, he's out of luck in terms of dealing with this law, correct?
Correct.
All right. You know, when people watch these shows, and there's a lot of tenants out there, there's more tenants than landlords, right? Everybody wants to know, what are the responsibilities that a landlord in the state of Iowa owes tenants?
Well, when you first move into your premises, they owe them a check of their premises to make sure they're generally safe. If certain conditions arise that create a danger or make the environment uninhabitable, they have an obligation to go correct that.
Okay. What about maintenance responsibilities?
That's an area in Iowa that's still a little loose. Maintenance is a general duty of the landlord.
Yeah.
So again, they have an obligation to come in and perform general maintenance, but if the tenant doesn't inform them of a problem, there's still a little leeway in Iowa for a landlord.
Yeah, let's say the place is infested with some bugs, you know, and the landlord supposedly treats it, but it's ineffective. What can a tenant do?
Well, that's, if using the bed bug example, they'd give the landlord notice that, hey, you treated it and they're back or it didn't work. Yeah. They'd have 30 days to remedy it or the tenant can leave. Also, the tenant would have the ability, if they've lost equipment or their bedding is infested or things have to be destroyed, they could make a claim against the landlord for that damage that they suffered.
Okay. Anything else tenants should be aware of, their rights when they're dealing with landlords?
One thing a tenant should, even though it's overwhelming for most people, they should take a careful look at the lease. There are certain things landlords like to put in the lease that cause people to on paper, forfeit their rights, say that you'll never be able to sue us, regardless of
You mean
what our
like an
actions.
arbitration clause?
There'll be those as well, but in the extreme examples of leases I've seen, they'll say, even if I hurt you or kill you, you can't sue me.
You've seen those words?
In leases, yes.
Well, what were the exact words? I'm just curious.
By signing this lease, you agree that the landlord shall be held not liable for any loss to you, your property, or life. Basically a release that says, you know, you can't sue me.
They haven't been held up in court, have they?
I am not aware of any of those being enforced.
Right. They're basically taking advantage of people who don't have the capability of buying their own home, correct?
That and or potentially a lack of education or experience in the market as well.
Let's talk about, you know, clients. There's a lot of people that call your firm. You've been around a while. And a lot of people have potential problems or what they perceive to be potential problems. How do you select your clients as well as your cases?
Well, with the cases, we'll start there. Unfortunately, a lot's driven by economics. With the Stacey Struve case, you can't just go spend $60,000 or $70,000 on every case.
Yeah. Sometimes
people are truly harmed. In Iowa, there's a small claims limit of $5,000. Sometimes if the injury or harms are $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, it's just not economical to go do a full-blown district court case.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to people and give them advice or tell them how to do that.
Yeah.
Then you get into your larger cases. There are certain areas where it can be more expensive to try the case than what you can get out of it. I'm upfront with the client about that. I'll tell them, hey, we could win, but it's going to be a hollow victory, and we assess that together.
Yeah.
And I use a lot of cost-benefit analysis. With respect to selecting a client, to me, the number one priority of mine is honesty.
Yeah.
If I get any sense that somebody's trying to get over on the system, embellish their story, they start asking questions, what's good for the lawsuit, I'm immediately turned off. I want to take a legitimate, non-frivolous claim and help somebody who's truly been injured.
And this is another thing I want to bring up. You brought up that word frivolous. What happens when anybody files a frivolous lawsuit, generally? What does a judge do?
They're dismissed.
Yeah.
I mean, the word itself, frivolous. I mean, it's amusing to me that people say that there are frivolous lawsuits because the definition of frivolous,
get dismissed.
They don't exist.
And the only thing that happens is you lose the filing fee for the lawsuit, right?
Well, they usually stick it to your heart. You'd lose thousands of dollars through preparation.
Yeah. How do you see? You're a, would you say, retired military or ex-military officer?
Yes.
How do you see your role in society today?
Well, just as I served my country,
Yes.
I feel I have a duty to serve those who are less fortunate or less well off than myself.
Yeah, and how do you see the justice system today evolving?
I think it's become more difficult for people to get access to the legal system. When I started, I think it was around $200 or $300 to file a federal case. It's north of $500.
Right.
And to some people, that's not a lot of money. Most of the people I represent,
Yeah.
they don't have $500 laying around, let alone thousands and thousands to perform the litigation.
Well, congratulations on your case. You did a great job, and we really thank you for spending time with us here in Cedar Rapids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.